The United States is hosting the biggest World Cup in football history. 11 cities, 78 matches, the final, the semifinals, every knockout game from the quarterfinals onward. Every single one of those marquee moments on American soil. And yet somehow, right now, it doesn't feel like America's tournament. The opening match? Mexico. The most iconic stadium in World Cup history, Estadio Azteca, roaring with nearly 90,000 fans on June 11th, and the USA won't even be playing. Canada gets their moment on June 12th, and then finally, the United States kicks off their tournament in a stadium that can't sell out, against Paraguay, with 30,000 empty seats still sitting there weeks from kickoff. That is the reality of the 2026 World Cup right now. The country that fought to host this tournament, that promised to turn North America into the greatest football party the world has ever seen, is watching its co-hosts generate more noise, more history, and more global excitement, while the Americans themselves can't even fill their own opening game. So what exactly happened here? How did the United States end up looking like a supporting act in a tournament it was supposed to headline? Let's start at the very beginning, because this story goes back further than most people realize. When the United States, Canada, and Mexico won the right to host the 2026 World Cup, the bid was called United 26, one joint vision, three nations working together. And the original match allocation reflected a kind of balance between them. But over time, that balance shifted dramatically in America's favor. By the time the final format was confirmed in 2023, the numbers were stark. Canada hosts 13 matches, Mexico hosts 13 matches, the United States hosts 78. Every quarterfinal, every semifinal, the third-place playoff, and the final itself at New York, New Jersey Stadium on July 19th. On paper, that looks like America won the hosting rights entirely. 78 matches is not a co-hosting arrangement, it's a takeover. And for a while, that felt like a triumph. The most matches, the biggest stages, the final. The US was going to be the centerpiece of the most watched sporting event on Earth. But here's where the story takes a turn nobody inside FIFA or US soccer fully anticipated. Mexico was given something that no number of quarterfinals can buy. They were given the opening match. June 11th, Estadio Azteca, Mexico versus South Africa, the very first kickoff of the entire tournament at the same stadium that hosted the opening of the 1970 World Cup and the final of the 1986 tournament. The ground where Pelé's Brazil lifted the Jules Rimet Trophy, the ground where Diego Maradona produced the hand of God and the goal of the century in the same match against England. No stadium on earth has hosted more World Cup football, and it's not just hosting the opener of the 2026 World Cup, it's doing so for the third time. No other venue in history can say that. When FIFA made that decision, something quietly but unmistakably shifted. The tournament didn't begin in the United States, it began in Mexico City, in altitude, in noise, in history, in a stadium that has seen more of football's greatest moments than anywhere else on earth. And for Mexican football, this isn't just symbolic. Mexico is in Group A, playing their group stage matches on home soil. If they top the group, they could host their round of 32 match at the Azteca too. 5 home matches, 5 games in front of nearly 90,000 of their own fans. That kind of home advantage at a World Cup is almost unprecedented in the modern era. The atmosphere inside that ground when El Tri are playing, there is nothing in football quite like it. Canada, meanwhile, has a moment of their own to celebrate. Their national team has never played at a World Cup on home soil. This summer, they opened their campaign at BMO Field in Toronto on June 12th in front of their own fans, with a chance to make history in a city that has watched the sport grow from the margins to the mainstream over the last decade. Canadian football has been on a genuine upward trajectory. The men's team qualified for this tournament on merit, competing in CONCACAF alongside the United States and Mexico. And when they walk out in Toronto this June, it will be the first time in history that Canada has hosted a men's World Cup. That's a genuinely powerful moment, and it belongs entirely to Canada. Now look at what's happening on the American side. The United States opens on June 12th at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, one of the most spectacular modern arenas on the planet. home of the NFL's Los Angeles Rams and Chargers, a venue that screams big-time sport. And it should have been an electric occasion, the host nation's first match of the tournament, the moment American football culture announces itself to the world, the game that was supposed to prove once and for all that soccer belongs in the United States. Instead, it's lagging behind every expectation. According to an internal document distributed to local organizers in April, only 40,934 tickets had been sold for the USA vs. Paraguay match as of April 10th. SoFi Stadium has a listed World Cup capacity of 69,650. That means roughly 30,000 seats were still sitting there with less than 2 months before kickoff. 30,000 empty seats for the host nation's opening match at the tournament they spent years campaigning to bring to their country. But here's the number that really stings. At the same stadium, 3 days after the USA game, Iran versus New Zealand had already sold 50,661 tickets. Iran versus New Zealand, a nation with enormous political complications around its participation at this tournament. New Zealand, a team making a modest impact on global football, and that match had sold more tickets at the same venue than the United States opening game. Think about what that tells you. It tells you that when FIFA made the USA versus Paraguay game the third most expensive match of the entire tournament, behind only the final and one semifinal, they made a decision that has backfired significantly. Category 1 tickets were priced at $2,773, Category 2 at nearly $2,000, Category 3 at over $1,000. For a group stage match against Paraguay, ranked outside the top 20 in the world, with no history of bringing a large traveling fan base to tournaments. FIFA priced that match like it was the final. The market told them it wasn't, and now the resale prices for USA versus Paraguay are moving in the wrong direction entirely. Some seats are already being listed below face value. In World Cup terms, that is almost unheard of for a host nation's opening match. Pep Guardiola said it simply: soccer is for the fans. He wasn't talking specifically about this game, but it could have been. When the cheapest seat to watch your national team open a World Cup costs more than most people's monthly rent, something has gone badly wrong. And this pricing gap between the US matches and the others has created something uncomfortable. Matches in Mexico and Canada are significantly cheaper. Fans can attend games in Guadalajara or Toronto at a fraction of what it costs to sit in the same tier at SoFi Stadium. So the international fans who do travel to the 2026 World Cup, the ones who generate the color, the noise, the flags, the chants, the atmosphere that makes a tournament feel alive, many of them are gravitating toward Canada and Mexico, where the football is more affordable and the welcome feels less complicated. The result, at least so far, is that the co-hosts are generating a warmth and a buzz that the main host is struggling to match on the ground. Here's the bigger picture that all of this points to. The United States made a calculated bet when it took on 78 of the tournament's 104 matches. The bet was that more matches meant more revenue, more visibility, more opportunity to grow the sport domestically. That logic makes sense on paper. The quarterfinals and semifinals and final will almost certainly generate the atmospheres they're designed for. Those matches sell themselves, regardless of which team is playing. When it gets to the last 8, every neutral watches, every seat fills. But the group stage is different. Group stage football lives and dies on the passion of the fans who follow the teams playing in it. And the United States, despite hosting the majority of those matches, is in a complicated position. The country's football culture is still developing. The domestic league is growing but hasn't yet built the deep tribal identity that makes fans travel thousands of miles and spend thousands of dollars to watch a group stage match. And the political and economic climate around the tournament has added friction at exactly the moment when friction is most damaging. Mexico doesn't have that problem. When Mexico play at the Azteca, the entire country stops. The culture is embedded in generations of football love. The atmosphere is legendary. Ask any visiting team that has played there about what it feels like to walk into that stadium. Canada is experiencing something genuine too, a nation discovering what it means to host major football, with a team that has earned its place and a fan base that wants to believe in something new. The United States has something that neither of its co-hosts will experience this summer. It has the final, it has the semifinals, it has the entire climax of the tournament playing out in its stadiums, building to one defining night in East Rutherford on July 19th. That is the kind of legacy that genuinely shapes how the world remembers a tournament. And those matches will be full, they will be electric. The last four teams standing will have fans who've chased them across a continent, and the atmosphere will reflect that. But the opening chapter of the story, the first match of the tournament, the moment the whole world tunes in together for the very first time, that belongs to Mexico, and the energy of those first days when the Azteca roars to life and Mexican fans fill the streets of Mexico City in a way that only Mexican football fans can, that image will travel around the world before a single game has been played on U.S. soil. There's a question worth asking here that goes beyond logistics and ticket sales. The United States wanted to use this World Cup to prove that it is a genuine football nation, not just a host country, not just the biggest economy that could build the biggest stadiums, a place where the sport is loved and understood and felt at a grassroots level. The opening match fiasco, if 30,000 empty seats materialize on June 12th in Los Angeles, would be a jarring contradiction of that message. It would be the image that gets used to argue the opposite. FIFA still has time to respond. They've already launched a new last-minute sales phase announcing additional tickets across all 104 matches from April 22nd. Whether that moves the needle for the US opener or whether it simply confirms that the original price points were unreachable will become clear in the coming weeks. The simplest version of this story is that FIFA overestimated American football demand at group stage prices and underestimated just how much the cultural and atmospheric edge would belong to its co-hosts in those crucial early days. Mexico gets the opener, Canada gets its historic moment, the United States gets the final. In terms of the football that matters most, America ends up with the biggest prize. But in terms of the story that gets told about this tournament, the narrative of who really owned the 2026 World Cup and who inspired the world's imagination first, that conversation has not gone the way US soccer was expecting. So tell me what you think. Do you believe the United States will create the atmosphere it promised once the tournament actually begins? Or has the early story of this World Cup already shifted in favor of Canada and Mexico? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know where you stand. If this kind of coverage is why you're here, subscribe and stay with us all the way to the final whistle in July. This story is still developing, and as always, football never stays quiet for long. See you in the next one.